Welcome, everyone, to the Midnight Charrette, a design variety show by two architects, myself, David Lee, and Marina Borderonay. Two architects, and today we are talking about the AREs, which stands for the Architect's Registration Examination. The Architect Registration Examination. Not easy to say that, really.
Basically, the exams, you can call yourself an architect. Let's just put it this way.
Exams you have to take to become a licensed architect in the United States, for the state that you're
of America.
Applying to. Yes, that is right. Not the United States of
Is there another one out there?
Africa has United States, I'm sure.
Does it?
No. We've had some requests to do this recording, and we've been trying to accomplish it for quite some time, and we're finally getting to it. I think what we're going to do is tell our story and experience, starting from deciding to take the exams, to studying, to taking them, and then to afterwards. And I know there's a lot of material out there to help people study for exams, and hopefully we can provide something different than all of those, and in our unique style, of course.
Of course.
Sponsors,
if you're listening to this episode, you are most likely an architect. And you know what? It's the new decade. You might want to be starting a new job, and you don't know where to look to find new jobs. You can go to Architect.com. Architect has a giant job board where a lot of offices from all around the world post job advertisement for specific positions they're looking to hire. There is oftentimes a pretty extensive job description, an email address where you can submit your materials. And they also advertise their job post on Instagram once in a while. So make sure you check it out. Their website also has a lot of topics that people discuss through forums, and they're very active. So, if you need any advice there, you can definitely ask the community on that platform.
And because this is an architecture-specific recording, it's very likely that you are an architect or soon to be one. And if that's the case and you are at university, then you should check out studyarchitecture.com. It is a great resource for students and even teachers who want to understand education better. And it is it's a website created by the ACSA, which is the American Collegiate something architecture something.
Wow, we're doing such a great job with sponsors.
All these abbreviations, it's like, but studyarchitecture.com is a great place, so you should check them out.
And finally, since you are an architect, now we know it, and you're looking to use BIM programs to do 2D and 3D drawings and models, we recommend checking out Graphisoft.com and their software called ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD is very fast, really friendly, very good interface. It's not expensive. You can, buy a license and not do the subscription thing. And they have a great support team. They come up with updates of their software very often. So make sure to check it out. Go to graphisoft.com and look at ArchiCAD. And I believe they are at version 22.
Ooh, 22. And of course, if you are looking for advice about design and architecture, or maybe you don't even need advice, you just want to share your thoughts about this profession or life in general, then you can contact us via our hotline, which is 213-222-6950. And what would happen is if you call the number, it goes straight to voicemail. Then we play the voicemail on the recording, or you can text the number, and then we will read your text on the show and have a discussion about the topic. And we have a couple of these that we need to get through, but in a different recording. But you can reach us through that number, and we can have a dialogue, right?
Right. And if you want to spend a little more money for Valentine's Day or later, or, Mother's Day, Father's Day, your kid's birthday, go to the website naadme.com, which is basically an online store that curates a lot of goods designed by young talents of North Africa and the Middle East. Very tasty. I think they just got in some nice table lamps.
Excuse me. I just pulled up my arm.
And don't mind David. And if you use the code MIDNIGHT when you check out, you get 15% off, and they ship worldwide.
Yeah, don't mind me. For some reason, the arm is sagging.
It's really tough doing podcasts those days.
Today. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. It's peculiar. All right. Come on. Don't be flaccid. Stay up. All right. So the AREs, right?
You know what? I don't even know when I started the whole process for those exams. For me, it was a little bit more different than like, American born architecture students who are foreigners who went to American architecture school, because I did all of my schooling in France.
Ooh.
So I didn't even know if I would be eligible to take that exam, right?
Yep.
And so what I had to do to be able to take the exams,
eligible is the word.
I had to provide basically, I think it was NCARB, proof that the degree that I earned back in France was equivalent to a degree here.
Yeah.
So my degree in France was 5 years, so there was no problem on that. But I remember I had to submit pretty much all of my grades, my grade record from my 5 years in school, all the transcripts basically.
Yep.
Translate everything from French to English. Every single class description had to be translated by a certified translator, and then everything had to be submitted to, I think, the New York State of Education for review, and then like bounce back between like a couple of places before it was approved. And the whole process took, I don't know, like a few months. So if you're a foreigner and you're thinking starting those exams, be aware that you cannot start studying or even go and take the exams before this is done. So if you're not, going to do it immediately, just keep in mind that the whole process is going to take some time. And I don't even know if there was a fee. I can't remember.
Probably.
But
so this is going through NCARB, right?
I think what happened is I reached out to NCARB, and I ended up being so lucky that I found out a guy that gave me pretty much clear information of what I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to send my stuff and who to contact. So I would say try and, find a good contact at NCARB to help you do that, because it's not really straightforward.
Yeah.
There is really not any website that tells you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And get in touch with your school like now to get your transcript, because surprisingly my school was really fast at sending me the documents, which is not common in France specifically. And then, you have to find a translator. They have to do all the work, and it's kind of a pain in the booty. So, just be aware of it. But it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. C'est possible. That's French.
Extremely rude, but yeah.
So I think some people listening might be wondering, what degrees do I have to have to take the exams and stuff like that. For very quickly, a 5-year program in the United States means you can take the exams right afterwards. Actually, you can take the exams during school even, but it means that you can take the exams and then become a licensed architect. Other institutions, if it's a 4-year program that's not a Bachelor of Architecture, therefore it's a 4-year program, then you need to do a master's program. So that's a 4+2 system. Then you can take the exams and be a licensed architect. There's alternative routes too. You can practice for 10 years or something weird, then become licensed, but that's pretty much the typical way to do it. And
on that note, I think I started that whole process too to be able to do IDP hours, which now are AXP, right? You've got kind of your professional experience hours that you have to log in to fill out multiple categories.
Right.
So I think you do need to apply to be eligible to do that.
To do the AXP, or
to do
now the AXP? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. But it's maybe, people should know that it's not like you have to have a degree before you can do AXP, and it's not like you have to have both of those before the exams. You can kind of do them in whatever order, for the most part, from my understanding. Okay, so you've decided to take the exams, right? That's the decision you've made. Should you try to take them during school or after school? We covered this pretty extensively in a previous recording, episode 100-something, titled Becoming a Licensed Architect During School, parentheses, NCARB's IPAL program. So listen to that one if you're thinking about doing this during school, and that'll cover that.
Yep.
Right. The good thing about taking the exams when you're practicing and you're at an office is that a lot of offices cover the cost of the exams if you pass them.
Yeah, for the ones you pass.
So you pass them and then they reimburse you for the cost, right? Generally speaking, you don't get a raise after you get the exams. Nothing happens in the office. You don't get promoted. You don't get a raise. You just get reimbursed.
More respect.
Well, when you signed up to take the exams, when you decide I'm going to do this, how long before you made that decision did you actually start the process? Because that's an aspect for sure that a lot of people say, like, I'm going to take the exams, I want to become licensed. I have my AXP done, all my experience or my IDP, whatever, all that's done. I'm going to do the exams. And from the moment they say that until they actually start studying or they sign up, it's like 6 months, a year goes by, right?
Well, I think for me, I was ready as soon as I found out I needed to apply, to be eligible. So, my motivation was kind of diminished by the time I was able to. Yeah, I mean, if you want to start and you talk about starting, then you got to do it because. And
I found the best way to be motivated for this and actually for a lot of other things is to just sign up. And what's nice about the act of signing up is it doesn't require any effort. It doesn't. I think you do pay. So there's like a certain fee you have to pay, but you're not actually studying. You're just signing up, and I found that it's similar to like going to the gym or signing up for a gym membership in that sense. Like you tend to take action on things once you feel obligated to do it, right? So, and it's like one of the students in my class was asking, like, how do you be motivated to do all this stuff, miscellaneous thing, competitions or whatever? In the case of a competition, I'm like, we just sign up.
You don't think about it too much.
You don't think about it. If you think about it and you begin to realize how much work it's going to be that you don't have time for.
It's not going to be easy. So, if you want to be licensed, then you just sign up for it.
Yeah, and it's like you can't overthink it, right? It's like a psychological thing. Like for me, like if I've done many competitions, and a lot of them, it's like, let me have a beer and just, sign up, fuck it. And then the next day, like, oh shit, I guess I have to do it now. But it's a good strategy because for most people, they don't have the self-will to go through all the process unless there's something there pulling them.
And I think now with version 5.0, the way it works is that you make a payment basically and you reserve a seat, but you don't have to pick a date and time yet. You could do that later.
Oh, that's not good.
Which is good and it's not good, right? Because if you never pick a date, then how are you gonna, work backwards and make sure you're studying and be prepared for the target date? So I would say you sign up for it and pick a date like right away. Yeah. Like give yourself, 4, 6 weeks, 2 months for the first one maybe, if you want to have enough time to like dive into all of that materials and get familiar with it. And just commit to that. Just have a date.
So you've signed up now, study materials. How do you go about studying for the exams? What are the materials you use? How do you get them? How do you procure them?
Study materials, it's, there is a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I would say that it might be good actually that there is a lot of stuff because different things work for different people. So having choice is good, but knowing what works for you is not that easy to find out. Oftentimes, offices that you worked at will have already some PDFs of like the Ballast and Kaplan study guides, right?
What are the big study guides?
Ballast and Kaplans are the big study guides.
Yeah.
They most likely will have the version 4.0 or 5.0. You got to know that version 4.0 for some of those exams that you're taking, the materials is still the same. It's still identical, so you can still use that. And the mock-up tests that are in those, you could still use that to practice. I mean, the questions are very similar.
Right. Ballast.
So that's the two main ones. And then other ones are out there that are good to have just even for yourself for practice later on. There is the building code illustrated one that I have here by Francis Ching.
Oh wow, you brought it with you. How prepared.
I have props.
Is Francis Ching still alive?
I don't know. I kind of hope so. So this one's pretty good because if you're not familiar with building code and you don't really know how things work, it has like, a bunch of little diagram explaining like the main things in the code that you have to be familiar with.
Yeah.
If you are familiar with the code, you might not find it like super interesting, but I bought it on thriftbooks.com for like $5. So, it might be worth having. Another good one could be the IBC book. I had the 2012, but I think now the exam refers to a more recent version. And sometimes you can have like things in the code that, it is directly related to the IBC. So having it handy for like, mock-up exams or like practice questions is good because it trains you to go and search information in those materials, which you would probably have to do in some of the exams you're going to be taking.
Yeah, you have to know what the IBC looks like and know how to navigate
where the chapters are, what the different sections are, how to read it
And
That's
also, generally speaking, if you have an older version of the IBC, so let's say there's a newer version of the IBC that the exam uses.
I think they use 2015 or something.
Very likely the older version, assuming it's not from like the 1950s, will still work just as fine. I don't
they
really...
will. They do have like some formulas for like, building frontage that are slightly different and like exceptions like that. So as long as you are aware where the updates are and what might be affecting you for the test, I would say 2012 is okay.
Yeah.
Another very good one that I think anyone should have is the Architectural Graphics Standard book. So how to,
Are you looking at the camera?
Yeah, to see, because otherwise you can't see it.
Okay.
I have a very old version. I think this one is like, pretty old, but I also bought it, like secondhand. So this one's good if you don't know how to draw certain things for like wall section details, for example, window section details. You might see some of those graphics coming up in certain tests that you're going to be taking. So knowing how to read them, if you're out of school, you might not know. So those are good resources. And the last one we have here today is the Building Construction Illustrated by Mr. Ching. I have the 4th edition and it was great. This one is good because it's very easy to understand. You basically like explain everything you gotta know in like, very broad lines about a building, like mechanical system, plumbing system, structural systems. And it's all illustrated. It's, teeny tiny blocks of text. It's nothing heavy to read. So I found those pretty useful. You also could use MEED, Mechanical, Electrical...
Engineering book.
That you might have from school,
book, yeah.
Right? This one, I say, it's really painful.
It's painful.
I looked at it a couple times for, a few of the exams, and I don't think I really found anything interesting in it.
Well, there's nothing interesting, but it's still useful.
It's useful to have. Again, if you can buy it,
Yeah.
in a thrift store, like do that. But
your average Goodwill. And the other big resource is NCARB's own study.
Wait, I'm coming down the list.
Wait, let me say, so whatever study guide, study thing, right? You should read that handbook, right? You should read it front and back. Do all the mock questions on there. So
if you go on NCARB's website and you go look for like each of those separate exams you have to take, each exam has a little pamphlet that they call handbook.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, so they have like practice exams, and at the end of it, they also have like a pretty extensive list of books that they recommend looking at.
So I think sometimes people dismiss anything coming from NCARB because they do not have a good reputation. But the study guide booklet, whatever thing, is actually useful. And specifically, the mock questions are helpful. And they list, I believe in that booklet, they list what chapters even in the MEED book, that are going to be relevant for the exam. And so that's something that I found to be helpful.
They also have on NCARB still, I think, some quiz that you can take on different topics.
Right.
They have a lot of them are free, like you don't have to pay. Some others you have to pay. And so you can find like some PDFs about like, I don't know, like seismic structures and things like that. That could be helpful. The other one is the Architect Practice Handbook. Mm-hmm. That's very good for exams that are about contracts and what the architect's role is about and whose responsibility is for what and how each single contract is being written. That could be a good one. Going back to the NCARB website for a second, they also have a forum platform where a candidate who takes the exam can ask each other questions. Did you use any of that?
No. So what is it? It's a forum?
Yeah, it's just a forum where you can ask questions like, oh, I failed my exam. Do you have any tips? Or like, what would you recommend doing?
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And there's actually a lot of people, and you can even, just go on there and just consult responses of people posted.
I feel like that platform is also... a significant part of it is just knowing that other people are out there struggling and they have worse positions than you. So if you're working at a good office and you're struggling, you go on the forum and you say, okay, here's like a single mom in the middle of nowhere trying to do the exams, and they're having trouble even knowing what resources to have. Meanwhile, I have all the resources because I'm at my office. And I feel like the emotional support from that community.
Yeah,
is
it's not
helpful.
really for resources. It's more for like community, like support.
And you can't ask anything. NCARB is super strict about not disclosing or bringing any material from the exam outside of the building or outside of the examination room, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they go so far as like you're not supposed to, if you leave the exam, a lot of people recommend, okay, take notes and write down everything you remember from the exam. We officially do not recommend this because NCARB says it's not allowed. You can't do that.
You have to write it in your head.
I don't know, though. Are you allowed to think your own thoughts these days?
I don't know anymore. But what's good about this forum is that you can search questions for specific exams. So let's say you're taking PPD and you have questions about, what books you should be looking at, or like you have a question about something you don't understand in the IBC. You can like search like that. So it's pretty handy. Other resources out there online, there is Hyperfine that is pretty good. It's basically a guy who created a little, kind of mock-up exam case study situation after he took his exam. And it's really well put together. He comes up with some pretty often, and he also goes back to the ones he published and, kind of tweak them and fix them if you found other answers. It's really cheap. I think it costs like, I don't know, $30 or something, and you have like 10 different weeks of materials. He also provides you with a schedule. So week 1, you do the homework. Week 2, you do the other ones. I used it for my last 2 exams for PPD and PDD, and I thought it was pretty thorough. It was pretty close to what, you could expect happening during the test. And you could also reach out to him if you have any questions, things you don't understand. So I would definitely recommend his stuff. There is also Amber Book. Amber Book, I think, was created by a professor at, I don't remember if it's Cornell or some kind of architectural university. And Amber Book they have a lot of videos that are available for free on YouTube. But if you sign up with them, am I losing you right there? Like, I just see you like, I throw up.
Yeah, Amber Book. Yep. Sign up.
Have you used Amber Book?
Yeah, I vaguely. It sounds vaguely familiar. I mainly,
what did you use
I mainly use Ballast and Kaplan, and a little bit of Amber Book.
But you didn't pay, so I don't think you used Amber Book.
Well, then I didn't.
Okay.
Unless someone handed it to me illegally, which I would not have accepted.
I don't think so. But the good thing with Amber Book, I think if you go on the Facebook ARE group and you sign up with other people, you get a discount. So it's not super cheap. I think it's a couple $100 or something, but you get access to all of their videos. And basically, they take like each topic that you're supposed to know, like mechanical engineering, plumbing, structural, and you have a series of videos that are animated and illustrated where everything is really, really well explained. So I did that, and I actually took notes while watching the videos. Yeah. And then I made flashcards out of that. So I thought it was really, really good. And they also send you a physical book with all of the practice questions that they have in those videos. Lastly, I would say you could also go on the Facebook group ARE group. There is, I think it's called Karen's Notes or something, that made like sheets of notes for like a couple of those exams. And there is Mike Risika's AIA Bootcamp, which I took for my last 2 exams and I passed them. I think I studied for 3 months and I took PPD and PDD and passed them after failing a couple of times, which was really amazing. He has a very strong community in those boot camps and many other people that are in the same situation that can help you out. So I would definitely recommend it. Make sure that you work regularly every week on studying and you report what you've studied and you communicate with other people if you have questions. So I think that would be, like something I would definitely recommend if you are struggling, like if you keep taking the same exams and you keep failing and you don't know how to improve yourself and how to pass. I would definitely consider that. And of course, make flashcards.
Well, there's also black spectacles, right? There is. Is that the bald dude with the glasses?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, he looks
No
like
disrespect to him.
he looks like a cartoon. I mean, he looks like a nice guy. That's it.
Oh my God.
It sounds. He has a cool voice. Like I could just keep watching him. Like he's a nice guy. I want to keep hanging out with him, watch the videos.
Good. Yeah.
And I watched his stuff when I was still working for an office because we had free access to these, right? I don't think I really got a lot out of it, and I'm glad I didn't pay for it, to be honest. I think a lot of the videos, the content is pretty light and not often very clear.
Well, this is the thing too, for some perspective. When we both were in the throes of studying for the exams, we had been practicing for some time. So that's another bigger question, which perhaps we can talk about is should I take them earlier or later? I think you should practice for a bit and then take them. Otherwise, the material is going to be so abstract to you, and it's going to be like you're studying. It's going to be like you're studying something just to pass the test, as opposed to studying it and actually understanding what the fuck is going on and understanding the material, which is less useful in practice, and not really as fun. So I think the Black Spectacles videos for us and for anyone who's been practicing for a couple of years or for a bit of time is probably too basic. It's like really fundamental conceptual stuff, right? This is what a building system is about, and it helps the building operate, things like this. It's not quite that generic. But if you are underdeveloped in that area, it might be a good resource because it kind of helps you see the bigger picture of things, which is really hard to do because the exams are very detailed and heavy.
I would say, if you're going to pay, I don't know how much Black Spectacles is. If you're going to pay to have some videos that teach you stuff, I would definitely recommend going toward Amber Book more than going toward Black Spectacles, just because Amber Book, it's a guy who teaches at an architecture school, right? That's like his job is to explain to people who don't know anything what things are in clear terms. And the diagrams of those videos are really well done. And they're even upgrading the old ones. And it's much more structured. You could clearly see, you're starting in this video, you end up there, and you saw pretty much everything you had to see. The Black Spectacles, I just felt like there was a lot of them, a lot of videos. We had to watch them speed 2 or something to be able to make it through.
Well, that's the benefit of the Black Spectacles. You can watch them on speed 2, and you can actually, what I ended up doing was basically just listening to it on the subway, and then I would watch it at speed 2 and cram in a lot of, you feel like, well, what's the movie with Keanu Reeves where he plugs in into, he has a gigabyte of memory for, what's his name? His name is Johnny Hard Drive or something. He downloads information to his head.
1 gigabyte? That won't take him very far anymore.
It's a sci-fi movie. He's like Johnny Gigabyte or something is his name, right? He's like, plug me in. It's not the Matrix. Plug me in. And he has 1 gigabyte of storage. And everyone's like, whoa, a gigabyte of storage. You have the knowledge of the entire world in your head. But if you watch it at 2 times speed, it kind of feels like this. But it is very lightweight.
It's very lightweight, and it's mostly him talking. You sometimes see him draw, very simple things with a pen. I don't know. I just didn't. I really had put really a lot of trust and ambition in those videos, and I really don't think I squeezed much juice out of it. So I would not really focus on that one.
So Amber is the one that you like the.
I think what made me finish those last 2 exams that were a pain in the ass for me.
Yeah.
Because I failed both of them at least a couple times, and at some point I was like, you know what? I'm close to the end. In the same time, I'm not sure how close I am to the end because I don't seem to be studying the right stuff to pass. So what really made a difference, I think, was to join Mike Rusika's AIA Bootcamp for sure, because I studied, I think, over 300 hours for the last 2 exams I took, which is probably 10 times more than I ever studied for any previous exams I passed. I was way more structured in the way I studied for it, instead of just going through the whole book of Kaplan and Ballast and then hope that I would know everything. And Amber Book having a visual, I'm a very visual memory person. So having a visual, I'll be able to understand things and remember. If I see a question in a mock-up exam, I would think about the diagram that's in Amber Book. and I would make like, screenshot and put that on my flashcards and like put notes around it. And, it becomes your own material at the end. So
let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people, listening to this and looking for other resources for the AREs is like, just tell me which is the best one. And basically people want to know, okay, which, study material is going to be the closest thing to the exam, so I can just memorize that, go in and take the exam. Have you found anything that's like it? That's like that, rather?
Again, it doesn't really work that way, and it also really depends on what is your background. Like how much, what's your experience, what do you already know, what do you not know, what's your weakness, what are the things you need to be working on, what are the things you don't need to spend more time on.
Well, so let me ask you this. I think that's also one thing people are wondering about boot camps and like programs you sign up for. Excuse me. Like, for example, Mike's Bootcamp. If I sign up, is it going to be a secret community of people that tell me all the secrets and all of the answers? Is it like that? Do you wear cloaks and get answers to the exams?
I wish.
Yeah?
I wish I wouldn't have had to study for 300 hours. No, you're not. So in those boot camps, and in anywhere, when you take those exams, you sign an agreement that says you cannot disclose any of those test content.
Right.
So in the boot camps, you can't refer to any specific questions you've seen in the exams. You can only refer to, like some that you might have practiced and you have problem with, but that's it. You can't.
And we will say, because we know Mike, that the way he runs his program is he's very takes those things very seriously. So if he's running it and he comes across anything that's close, and he has a Facebook group dedicated to the AREs too, and he monitors that. If he comes across anything that's close to basically just giving out questions directly from the exam, he will cut it off immediately.
Oh yeah, and even when you join his bootcamp, you also have to sign an agreement that you are not going to disclose anything, which makes sense.
Here's the thing with that mentality, right? Of like, just tell me what I need to know for the exam. Well, first of all, from what we understand is that the exam is not the same every time, right? They have a whole bunch of different questions that circulate. So if you take it a second time, it doesn't mean you're going to get the same questions. And I will tell you also that, not to get too far off track or ahead, but I've had to retake one of the exams, I think 3 times, was it?
Oh,
right.
How common is that?
But each time you go in, it's like you have no idea. You're gonna either you're gonna get the really easy version or the hard version, or somewhere in the middle. And it's a really big, broad spectrum. And so memorizing like specific answers to questions is really not that helpful, right?
No, it's not. And I think if you've taken those exams already a few times, you kind of know what things you are good at in those exams and what things you are not. Like, let's say you had questions that were about structural and you're like really not understanding structural. Well, maybe for next round, you should really focus on that first.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe the bathroom count, you got it. You don't need to spend more time working on bathroom counts. So really knowing where your weaknesses is, I think, is a big, big one.
So the study materials, so the last 2 exams were kind of a different beast for you because, you failed it a couple of times. So you had to you did the boot camp and you did Amber and all that stuff. And also we should note that there was a significant break in time between the first 3 that you took and the last 2, right? Like
the last 2 that I took and passed, I think before I passed them, there was a huge gap because, right, we relocated from one coast to the next. So, that takes some adjustment. And also you have to know that when you fail exams, you can only take one exam 3 times a year. So once you fail for the 3rd time, you have to wait until the date at which you first took it, but a year later. Yeah. Right. So that is also to take into consideration because you might end up having huge gaps between exams. And as soon as you fail, I would say, and as soon as you can reschedule it, do it right away because this lapse of time can have a big impact.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. So the first 3 exams, let's kind of talk about how you strategized for them, what you did, because they were a little bit different. Like during that time, I think we were both doing the exam, so it was a lot of in the middle of studying exam. Of the materials you listed, did you pretty much study all of them like equally, or were there ones that were more important, or like what was your strategy
for the
first 3?
Oh, the first 3 exams?
Yes.
Oh, so at the time we took the exams, we were still in version 4.0 and 5.0, right? So we basically studied for 3 of the 4.0 version. And that was kind of chaotic. I think back then, the only resources I had or knew about was the Kaplan and the Ballast, which I truly, deeply hate.
They're poorly written.
They're poorly written.
Yeah.
They're not giving it's mostly text, which is very heavy to read. The diagrams there's not that many, and there's a lot of stuff that's either like it's super generic that no one gives a shit, or that I've never seen in any of the questions I took for any of the exams I took and retook. So I'm like, what's the point of having that? So I focused on those. I think I would say generally I always went more with Ballast than I did with Kaplan, just because I felt like their stuff was more legit. The content was more legit. And then I always had the graphic standard, and I think the Building Construction Illustrated was also one of the first books I purchased.
I mean, it's kind of a funny thing because when you first start off taking the exams, and let's assume you're in your 30s or around that point in your career, right? It's like, you know, you're not going to sign up for a boot camp and spend $500 for all these, and thousands of dollars for all these study materials and things like this from the very beginning. What you're going to do most likely is say, okay, well, let's see what materials I can get for free.
Yeah.
Legally. And then I'll study. And if I pass it, then, okay, I'm just going to keep doing that.
Yeah, because each exam costs about $200.
$200,
so,
and I think
$20 now or something like that.
So, I mean, I think, yeah, the first batch, well, I mean, all the exams for me, but the first batch of exams for you were kind of like, it was much more chaotic, the process. It was like, what materials can we get a hold of? When do we have time to study and take the test? And there wasn't as much, like looking back on it, having gone through the whole process, there's a much clearer like oversight and understanding of the whole thing because we went through it, but also because now we know Mike and we know other people and other things.
Well, that, and also, well, you know, I was a foreigner. I didn't study here. I've never done like computerized tasting.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how does that work? Right?
Yeah.
Study materials, there is nowhere really to tell you what you're supposed to learn, how you're supposed to study, how often, for how long, right? So it's all kind of really overwhelming.
So, yeah.
Well, I would say a big one too that worked for me was flashcards.
Oh, yes. Same.
And again, you know, I mean, you can start making flashcards about everything, but at the end of the day, flashcards are supposed to help you trim down the stuff that you have to like stick in your head for the day of the exam. So I would like, you know, read all of those materials, watch all of those videos, take notes, and then maybe a couple weeks before the exam, start making flashcards and then start learning them and eliminating the ones I knew, you know, making new ones, you know, print stuff out, cut it, stick it on a flashcard, like put colors, like group them by exams, by topics, by things. There is also an app I started using called, I think it's called Quizlet. I think it was like $10 for the year or something. And you can make your own flashcards on your phone, so you don't have to carry with you a stack of flashcards. And you can also find other people who made AIA flashcards on that app. So you can, like, you know, if there is a flashcard that you like from someone, you can also just put it in your account. So yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Yeah, and generally, I remember when I started taking the exams, I had heard from someone that 6 weeks, right, a month and a half for each exam is if you're studying pretty much every weekend. If you're studying every weekend, like seriously, you know, 8 hours, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe doing some light studying during the week. And I would say for someone of my intellectual level, which is quite low, that seemed to be about right. 6 weeks, and I felt pretty good going in.
It's pretty tough if you work full-time and you try to get those done, because really, you know, then you have to really maximize, like, what is the best time for you to study during the day, during the week, to get the most out of your study time, right? Like if you... Like we tried to study, you know, getting back home and like read a chapter or two in Kaplan or Ballast, but really, like, I was exhausted of my day. My brain wasn't there anymore. The
quality of the studying is just too low.
Like just reading stuff and reading just did not work for me at all. Some friends would wake up like a couple hours earlier in the day before going to work and study then, or they would show up at work like 2 hours earlier to be alone in the office on a computer and like do their stuff because they feel like there is no distraction around them at home to study, which I could see. other friends who go to like coffee shops, put headphones on, and spend the whole Saturday studying.
I mean, the biggest challenge with the exams is to get back into that studying mode, because if you're so let's say you have a lot of professional experience and you try to take the exams without studying, you're very likely not going to pass. There's like a 99% chance you're not going to pass, because the exams are not an accurate reflection of what it's like to actually practice. And that is a 100% true statement that a lot of people will agree with me on. So it's getting back into that studying mode. So there is, I think, it's like you want to practice for some time so you know the stuff. That way when you study the material, it's not totally random to you and abstract again. But also you don't want to wait too long, because then you become too entrenched in the way practice actually works, which is not what the exam is. And also you're too far from school. So there is something about being able to tap into, the study mindset and work ethic and that mode of existence that you hopefully had during school if you were a good student, which I was not, that you can easily get back into it if it's been, if you take it earlier than later in some ways.
And I would say, another very key thing to succeed is to be super organized, like super disciplined, make a schedule and stick to it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, For me, really, it helped me, because, like you said, you have to go back in the mode of studying, but you also have to get interested in the stuff you're studying, which is really difficult.
It's really difficult, and I think it's really easy to be just negative about the whole process. And for what are you doing? How come it doesn't go in? It's bothering me that it doesn't go in.
Because I loop it around. God, just stay focused.
Oh, okay. No, I thought, okay. So for me, for a lot of the process, I was just really, really angry at the exams and NCARB and I throw the AIA in there, and my boss, that angry at everybody. Fuck the world. This is bullshit. I paid my dues, 6 long years in school. I bust my ass at work. I know my material, and these exams are telling me something otherwise. And the study materials are poorly written. Ballast, Kaplan is the same company that do like all the standardized, whatever study materials for different exams. They're bullshit. It's like, I feel like I'm back in high school reading some history book that was written by someone who probably didn't even graduate high school, and it doesn't make sense. I hate my life. I hate this. And I'll tell you, that's not the best attitude to have. And the switch for me was when I realized, I'm just going to pretend that I'm deeply interested in it. I am deeply interested in this material, but I'm going to pretend that I'm interested in this material, and that I'm going to learn about it through these ways. And once you think about the studying process more as an educational experience, like I need to learn about this, let me research this, then it becomes better. So like in actual studying actions, like a pivot point was, I would read the Ballast stuff, read the Kaplan stuff 2 or 3 times, make notes, make flashcards, and that was kind of it. But when you go through it, there's always a fair number of items and subjects that you don't understand even after reading it, because again, either what they wrote just doesn't add up, or it's too generic. So then I would take it upon myself to say, okay, well, instead of just writing this off and saying, well, I don't need to know it because Kaplan didn't write enough about it, or they're too generic or poorly written, I would just go online and go to other resources and figure out, this thing, right, there's some specific terminologies that seem to be conflicting. Instead of saying, well, because the material didn't provide me the answer, it's unclear, and I'm not going to think about it because of that, I'm going to actively try and problem solve this on my own. And it was more of a mentality switch. Once I did that, things seemed to be much smoother in that sense.
And I think that's absolutely true. I remember when I was in the bootcamp, one of the girl who recently passed her exam was sharing tips, and she said one thing I would recommend is to study with the exams and to go to the test the day off with a very positive attitude. And I was like,
I never managed to do that,
and
though.
and I watched the video and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good in theory, but I know. And then I kind of switched my mind around. And I'm like, well, ideally I want to be licensed and it's a positive thing. So I'm going to try and be more positive about the fact that I'm spending all of those hours and not seeing my friends and not going out anymore to get those done, And I think it did make a difference at the end. Because then it makes you believe that it's possible, and it makes you, be more confident in yourself the day you take the exam. Which if you go and you're like, oh, this is just bullshit, it's just bullshit, I don't know anything, I'm going to fail again. Like, if you go with that mentality, well, that's not good.
I think it's proven in research that people think more creatively when they are happy.
Oh, possibly.
But anyway, that's true. And I think that's mostly to do with your disposition and attitude and less to do with the content. So I wouldn't say because I took it upon myself to do more research that therefore I was actually more prepared for the exam. I wouldn't say that. Every time, maybe I'm getting ahead, but every time I got the exam, regardless of how much studying I did, if I did 10 hours or 100 hours, still felt the same after I finished. Like, okay, well, that was weird. I have no idea. Flip a coin. I'll see what happens. So it's odd because I would say confidently that mental switch made a big impact, made a big difference. But I also can't say that it actually made a difference in terms of the material, like, and knowing things for the exam.
But it probably trained you in a way to, figure out the information differently or like approach questions when you were not really understanding it,
That's for sure true, because I think that, and I think Mike is the one who is a person who also says this, that in like school, you're trained to think outside of the box and be constantly pushing against the rules in a sense. Like the first thing you do when you get a program as a practicing architect or as a student is you question the shit out of the program and you redefine it and you add new stuff. You take out stuff that you don't think belongs there for your concept, for what you want to do. And that is totally not the right kind of thinking for the exam, because the exam has very strict rules of right and wrong, and there's no negotiating, there's no standing in front of a jury and giving your opinions of politics and society and why a house should be made of only stone. None of that. It's either right or wrong. And by the way, even if what the exam is saying is categorically 100% wrong, doesn't matter, because they're still right. You get what I'm saying? And when you're a designer and you're creative, that's you don't accept it. That's why you do what you do. That's why you're a designer. That's why you're a creative person. You don't accept it. You reject it. You're a rebel. Fuck the system.
And I remember, I think the first exams I took, I would always like read the question and be like, okay, it's a trick question. They're trying to trick me. Like they want me to go there, but really that's the answer. Yeah. And really, it doesn't work that way. I feel like they're not that smart, to be honest. The people who write the questions,
they are not.
And one of our friends recommended that to us after he finished his exam, was like, you know what? Just go to the exam. Don't overthink the answers. Just go with probably your first intuition of what the answer is, because it's most likely going to be what it is.
Yeah, I was never good at that.
Well, and at the first exams I took, I was just like, overthinking. And after he told me that, the next round I went and I most likely followed my first intuition, and it worked. So I would say, just don't, because if you start overthinking it, then you kind of like start questioning what you know, and then you're just losing balance and like, the knowledge and confidence you had when you first stepped in the room. So
I definitely want to talk about what it's like taking the exam, but let's see. So we're studying, we've signed up for the exam, going through the materials, and so for me, what happened was, I got a couple PDFs from my office, read those like 1.5 times, took the exam. I passed. After I took the exam, before I found out the results, I was like, well, that was
wait.
Really unclear.
No. We started studying for the same exam. So the plan was we were taking the exams together at the same time, which if you are a couple, I would probably not recommend necessarily.
Hey. But it is.
So what would happen is that we stopped seeing our friends, we stopped going out. It's like all of our free time at home was like exam, like nonstop. Yeah. And we would spend pretty much the entire weekend reading Ballast and Kaplan out loud to each other to try to get into it, take notes, do the mock-up exam.
I have the comprehension skills of a second.
So we studied the same material, the same amount of time. Yeah. And I most often was explaining things to you because you did not know them.
Yep.
And then we each go our ways to take the test. And you go, you find out you pass. And I find out I didn't.
Oh, really?
And I was pissed. And that happened for the next few exams. I was like, you know what? That's just unfair.
This is to highlight the fact that the exams have nothing to do with the knowledge you actually have. And that people have said that before, and we are standing by that. We agree that is 100% the case. Has nothing to do with what you actually know. The struggle that you had was because you're not from the United States, so therefore English is a second language. That's a significant thing. And I think, broadly speaking, also, one of the things that's interesting about being in a relationship with someone from a different country is you realize the cultural differences, how far they go down, and the language differences, the subtleties of the meanings of different words that are embedded within a person because they happen to be raised in a certain country is never ceases to amaze me.
It might just be because my brain doesn't work.
Could be true. Maybe you're just, yeah.
Might not be just the French people, you know.
But so that also means that if you are an expat in the United States and you're taking these exams, it's going to be difficult because of that. But that's one thing. But also the fact that it is an American way of testing. It's a standardized test, which I've had training in. All the American students have had training in because of the SATs, because of the I don't know, whatever other tests there are, we get trained for it, right? It's a certain way of thinking, it's a certain way of studying, and it has nothing to do really with normal life or practicing or being successful. None of that. And so that's, to me, the biggest challenge with the test. And that's also why it was more challenging for you, because you knew the material just as good, if not better than me. And you come back and be like, well, what the fuck? Like, this question doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, first of all, you're right. It's poorly written. Even as a person who's from this country, who speaks English, okay. And I went through school. I did grad school. I've done a lot of reading. I've done some writing. I'm not really smart at all, but I went to grad school. Why is it that this sentence I have to read 10 times during the exam and I still don't understand what the fuck it's saying? It's not a vocabulary issue. There's basic words, but it's like someone wrote this backwards when they were drunk.
Yeah, it's like, someone was drunk when they wrote it.
But so that's why, for me, looking back, that's very clearly why it was more challenging for you.
No, I think that's true. I mean, the language thing, sure, it's not my first language. And there is definitely a couple of times at exams where I saw a word and I was like, I have no idea what that words mean. Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's the principal word of the main word of that sentence. So I'm not going to get it. But you know what? I'm just pick one. What am I to do? So then you go home and you research what the word meant.
You can't do that. You can't look up words. Illegal behaviors.
I need to some
How
vocabulary.
long should a spoochie be in a building? 10 feet or 2 inches?
A spoochie? What's a spoochie?
It's nothing.
But the thing that you said that's true is that it is not about the level of experience or knowledge you have. Like, we have friends who are in their 60s that took the exam and they failed.
It's harder for them.
It's actually harder for them.
Yep.
It is really about learning on how to take a test.
Yes.
And at that point, it's almost like, take any test, anywhere you go, anything, like any app, phone thing, like just get your hands on how many questions and tests and trivias and things you can, because it is really about managing your stress level, analyzing things correctly, taking your time, believing in yourself, being positive.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back then, so I took the first one. I passed it. I'm like, all right, cool.
I failed that one like 3 times.
And
then,
really?
I was pissed.
And then for me, the second one, I studied maybe not the same amount. I studied maybe like 80% as much time and dedication. Passed that one. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I was just pissed the whole time.
The third one, I did almost no studying. I got too cocky. I was like, all right, I got this. And I would study the material and read Ballast. And as soon as I got to, it was like a chapter, right? There's like one chapter. Start reading chapter 3. Second page of chapter 3, there's a set paragraph that doesn't make sense. Throughout the packet. Okay, skipping chapter 3. Forget all chapter 3. I distinctly remember going in to take the third test, whichever one it was. And I get there. And, the first 2 exams, I show up early. I woke up early, maybe exercised a little bit. This is when I barely made it there on time. I arrived at the front desk and the woman's like, okay, what exam are you taking? I said, I'm here for the ARAs. What exam? I'm like, the PPP? DD. PDD? DD. And as she looked at me, I'm like, it's one of them. I'm like, my name's in the system, right? Can't you just look it up and tell me? I will say I did not pass that exam. It's like, oh shit, okay. Go back to studying. Actually failed it a second time because I still didn't study enough, and then ended up passing it a third time. But that was the process. I mean, and so for the most part, the first 3 exams, it was just, or maybe it was the 4th one I failed. I forget. It was mostly just Kaplan and Ballast, which were not good. I wish I had done like the Amber route. That sounds like it would have been much more
I really wish I knew about Amber like way early on, because at the end, and even bootcamp, because at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I don't want to spend $200 in like a resource material.
Oh, it's so worth it though.
But if you're gonna fail like a couple of exams 2 or 3 times, at the end of the day, you probably should have spent that money up front in the right resources.
There's that, and also it's so frustrating to study material that when you know that you could have written it better, and you're trying to dissect it, and so all of your energy that's supposed to be going toward learning things is going toward trying to dissect information, which is actually kind of a good training for the exam itself in a way. But so the $200 because for failing, like you said, but also it would just make life less stressful.
I wish I knew about Amber and bootcamp early on to have the right material and also have a community that supports me. We were together studying for it and taking the exams, but because we're in a relationship, like that's not necessarily healthy or good. And because, our way to do things might not be the only way, and we might not have tips that we could really think of or share. So having access to other people that, could be there to help you think about your strategies and how to approach the exams differently, I think would have been very good.
And I think also because Kaplan and Ballast are the 2 ones that are the most common, and they get, copied and disseminated illegally the most often. So therefore, that's what everyone uses. But man, they are terrible. And I think one of the things too is as you go further along in the exams, and assuming that you fail 1 or 2, therefore you kind of have to amp up your approach to studying. When you then get your hands on a number of different resources, you just feel like the studying process goes is much more robust for sure, but also it feels better, right? It's like, I don't know this. Okay, I'm gonna look at this book and figure it out. I don't know this. I have this book. I'm gonna figure it out. In the very beginning, when you just have Kaplan and Ballast, let's say, and that's all you have, you feel like suffocated almost, right? Because if it doesn't exist in these study guides, then you don't know it, and it's really hard to just Google search something, straight raw Google search. It doesn't really work for these kinds of materials.
I remember reading those actually in the subway on the iPad. I had my iPad with the PDF of Ballast loaded on it, and I would read chapters when I commute. Which I think was okay, it might be just what you need to do with those books is just don't spend too much time on them. Read the chapters you don't really feel familiar with, and then move on to the other resources. But so when you found out you didn't pass that test, what did you do differently the next time?
Not much, which is why I failed the second time. There's something about, arrogance is definitely part of the equation, I think, for a lot of people when they're taking the exams, because, you've already been through a lot, so you feel like you have the right to just pass. You know what I mean? The third time when I did pass is because I studied a lot. And as I said, it's because I transitioned to thinking, okay, I'm actually going to try and, learn the material for myself and less for the exam. So it actually became a practice in just researching things for fun. Okay, I'm actually interested to know, how swales work, and there's a lot of terminology with the bioswales and all that kind of stuff, which was words were being used for different things, and I tried my best to figure it out, but I couldn't. I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck? Why is it okay? But so at some point, it wasn't even studying for the exams anymore. I was just looking at information because I tricked myself to being deeply interested in bioswales.
The time we went to Home Depot and I went to look at pipes there.
Yeah. I
was like, oh, let's check out the different types of pipes they have at Home Depot.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that's a very good way to make it fun. right? Like you see it in a video, well, maybe just go to Home Depot, look at them, feel them, buy one, you know,
right.
hang it above your desk so you see it every day. I remember also, I think after I think that was CDS, so back in version 4.0, and I felt it like the second time. I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, I need to pass it, or so it's my first one, so if I don't pass that one, should I just quit now? And I think I ended up signing up for one of the, I don't know, like study session at the AIA chapter in New York. You know, when they were like helping candidates. You know, I think they have like a series of, they're not lectures, they're not conferences.
Yeah. It's like a
they're
not
kind
seminar,
of like workshop,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I think they have them in like any AIA, it's scheduled throughout the year. So we ended up that the one that they had scheduled coming up was the one about the exams I was trying to pass.
Was that helpful?
So I went again with a lot of, you know, expectation and ambition. And there was 2 people presenting in a small room filled with, you know, 20 people who were like desperate on passing the stupid test.
Yeah.
And they went through like, you know, questions from the handbook and explaining like how to know which answer to pick and like things to avoid and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it was very generic advice.
Yeah.
And it didn't really like, I didn't feel like there was like big takeaway from like these 2 hours spent there. Yeah. So I clearly knew that this was not the route that was going to help me out. Yeah,
that's why I've always avoided study groups. Well, first of all, I don't like working in groups, but they're like sad puppies. Let's just put them down already. You know what?
All right, okay, well, that's your way to see it.
But you know what I mean?
No, I wasn't.
It's frustrating to go to these workshops and it's like a bunch of guppies here. It's gross.
Well, I felt like I went to like some kind of AA meeting or something. You know, I was like, all right, I guess by being here today, surrounded by losers like myself, I admitted that I'm not worth really much in this world. So let's try to figure out how I could better myself.
Yeah.
But I was mostly annoyed with the people who came up with the presentation because I'm like, you're not really telling me anything about what you're explaining to me why the answer is the answer, but I could just read it by reading your handbook at home on my couch. Like, just give me advice on like how to read your stupid test that doesn't make any sense, you know? So it was kind of really not helpful.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, that's why a lot of the study guides you find online are like how to pass the AREs. You know, here's a podcast about it. Here's a lecture about it. Here's a blog about it or whatever. It's like 99% of the material is just generic things. And that makes it difficult to consume. But also, I think maybe it's because the exam is so messed up that I don't think anyone's been able to figure out like a great solution for solving that problem. Like how do you prepare yourself mentally for the actual content on the exam? No one knows. It's totally random, wild card. The best you can do is have good study habits and all the stuff around the content, but the content itself, who knows?
Well, and I think what the mistake too is that, you know, or even the way the materials are set up is that they're like, oh, let's just study for PPD today and PDD tomorrow and CDS. Well, really, it's just like there's an ocean of material that you will have to know at any point in time.
Right.
So you shouldn't be limiting yourself to like what the NCARB handbook is telling you to be looking at. You should be looking at everything, and you should get familiar with everything because things from other tests can help you in other ones. Yeah,
I will say, I'm thinking back now, is the people who write the exam could do a much better job, but I think also it's a difficult thing to do because you're writing basically a standard test for the entire country of the United States. Yeah. And architecture is such a broad profession to begin with, plus the fact the United States is huge and each state does their own thing. Like, how do you write an exam for that? So what happens is that they I don't know how many questions are on each. Let's call it 100 questions, right? That's not a lot of questions, really, and maybe even less than that for the multiple choice. It's not a lot of questions, really, to try and cover, you know, one of these big chapters of construction documentation or whatever. What was construction documentation and services, right? Something like that. It's huge. So when you get the test, you end up having these really obscure questions that are super specific about a very detailed thing that in the cosmos of architectural information related to construction documentation and services is a tiny speck, like light years away in the universe, and they're going to ask you about that one fucking thing, right? And you get a lot of those. And So, I mean, in some ways, the exam is always going to be challenging, but I will say that when I got to exam like 4 or so, that it's weird. You get to a question, you have no idea what the answer is. You read it like, I have no idea what the answer is. I see A, B, C, and D. I don't even know. I have no idea. But maybe it's because you've already taken a number of exams, or because you have more information in your head. You can kind of connect dots that are not even part of the picture in front of you to figure out what the answer is. Does that make sense? And that's a weird, like, I remember this, like, weird moment where I realized, like, I'm actually using information that has nothing to do with this question or this test,
Help you out, yeah.
but somehow it's helping me figure out what the answer to this is. And I don't know what that means exactly, but it's to say that the one-tracked mindset that you to have in studying for one exam for all the exams doesn't really work. You need to be able to have to work lightly in a way and kind of like bounce around between different things.
And you should, and so then you should, look online and see like which exams have materials and topics that overlap, because it might be more worthwhile to study for like 2 exams at once than like, 6 weeks on one, 6 weeks on the other, where really some of those materials could have helped you out on certain questions. Yeah.
So I think actually as you go along, the exams become easier. Well, it really depends on which exam you're taking and the day of the week. But in some ways, it becomes easier because you're starting to build up a body of exam knowledge. This is not professional practice knowledge that's useful in any way, really, a lot of it. It's just exam knowledge. And then you begin to see the bigger picture, which the exams are set within. I think in like the first 2 exams, all the questions just seem like random and weird, and maybe later on you start to see what they're asking, because based within the scenario they're describing in the question, like, okay, well, this gets ruled out because of X, Y, or Z, which is, again, if the question is about bioswales, part of your being able to figure out whether or not it's answer A, B, or C has nothing to do with bioswales. It has to do with knowledge about contracts or knowledge about, the mission statement of the AIA or whatever, right?
So you studied for a few weeks, everything you can get your hands on. You stopped seeing your friends, so you're not distracted. You've been working out like crazy, so now you're shredded. And you are ready to go to take your first exam. Do you remember the first exam you took? How it went? Like the first day you stepped into the testing center?
The first one is, it's almost I recommend people just to sign up and take one just to go through the process and feel
it's kind of like the first boyfriend,
I suppose, yeah. I don't have that experience.
Just date one and then just,
The only downside is that you probably wasted $220. There used to we were talking to an architect in New York, this was a while ago, and he was saying, I bet that any of you young designers who are, again, between the age of 25 and 30, you could just go in and take the exam and you could pass without studying, because you guys are so smart and talented. And at the time, I'm like, oh, that's probably true. I could probably do that. In retrospect, no, you can't. If you do that and you pass, then yeah, you're probably pretty smart, but also you just got lucky. Because I'm telling you, the one exam I had to take 3 times, like, the first one was really difficult, and I understudied for sure, but also it was just really difficult. The third one I was like, okay, well, this is like easily 4 times easier than the first version I took.
It's really the luck of the draw, right? Like, I remember when I took CDS, like the first 2 times, I was like, man, like, what were those questions about? Like,
yeah.
It was like so difficult. And then the third time I show up, I'm ready, I've studied, I'm frustrated, I'm super angry, like, let's do it. And I finished the test. I'm like, what the heck, man? You have coworkers like, oh, I took the exam to pass the first time. I don't know what you did wrong. Like, really, it's not that hard. And you're like, well, I don't think we got the same one. And then you get the easy version and you're like, well, that's unfair, right? I mean, I get it. You have a database of questions and they each like are more or less difficult and complicated. But really, like, why am I getting the batch of all of the hard ones and Samantha over there is getting all of the easy ones?
The problem I have with people who say things like that, like, oh, I took all of the exams, I passed. There's an article someone wrote.
I finished all my exams in like 3 months. It's not such a big deal.
Before this recording, I was looking online at different websites and stuff, and someone wrote something on NCARB or ArcDay, I don't know, one of the sites saying, "Oh, I passed my exam in 6 months. Here how I did it." What a useless article that is. That is totally not helpful. It's like saying, "Oh, I'm super talented. Here's how I did it. I'm talented and I got lucky." Great. The reason why I hate that stuff is, one, it's a little bit inconsiderate. Two, it's not understanding the bigger picture of like the people that are needing help. And also, it's arrogant. It's super arrogant to say that, because no one says, "Oh, I took the exam and I passed it the first time and second time and third time and fourth time and all the exams in 6 months," without them wanting to show off a little bit. It's embedded in there somewhere for sure. And it's just not productive. It's not productive at all, and they don't realize they probably got really lucky with what exams they had.
They probably did, or they're like, they know exactly how to take an exam, and that's what got them to move fast. The whole point,
or it's like, congratulations, you passed all 6 or 5 in one run. You must be a psychopath.
But that's where, that's where having like a support community where there is other people in your situation that are failing. Because to be honest, the first time you find out you failed one of your first exams, it's pretty discouraging, right? Like, it's going to be a long ways to go before you get it done. It's not an easy thing. You have to make many sacrifices to, get over with it. And getting like stop signs and have to wait 3 months before you can retake it and stuff like that. It's really, you have to have like some stamina and keep your mojo going. Otherwise, you're never going to make it through. So I would say just ignore these people. People who are bragging and saying how easy it is and how they passed the first time. Like, it's not a competition. You don't need to get first on each of them. It's a personal process. It's a different journey for everybody, and it would take the time you need to take to get it. It's just totally
not
fine.
Helpful is what it is. Not positive. It's not particularly positive, and it's not helpful. It's like, I mean, this is a weird analogy, but like, in the United States, you're not supposed to drink raw eggs because of salmonella. And this is less a concern in other countries where they don't mess with their chickens like we do. And then I was talking to a friend of mine. He's like, "Well, my uncle, he drank 2 raw eggs every morning and never had any problems." I'm like, that's a very ignorant thing to say. So therefore, what, we should all drink 2 eggs every morning and think it's going to be okay? So therefore, what, we should all expect us to pass exams in the first 6 months? Like, shut up. It's not productive what you're saying. But, so taking the first exam, it's weird because it's a new thing, right? You have to show up like an hour and a half early or whatever.
It's like going to the airport to me. That was like the same experience. It's like going to the airport.
Yes, that's a very good analogy.
Empty your pocket, take your shoes off, show your belly button, like pull out your tongue.
Yeah. Take down your pants. Put on this glove. I'm going to check you for study materials. We took them in New York, and obviously you have to take the subway to get to the location. The subway's unpredictable, so you have to allow extra time. I think the first exam I got there like crazy. I got there like 2.5 hours early. I was like starving before the exam started because I got there early.
Well, the thing too is that you have a time that you booked your exam for, and you have to be there like half an hour, 45 minutes before usually.
Yeah, something.
But you can actually start the test earlier if they can accommodate you. Yeah. So if you feel better getting there like way early, you might have a chance you can take it right then.
Yeah, and so the second one is easier because you know the routine, the facility. There's less things that you're trying to that you're stressed out about. I
actually changed location after I failed the first one. I'm like, well, no, I went back to that testing center and then I failed again. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try another test center. There's bad energy, bad karma there. I can't do that.
So you get there, you make sure you have all the right identification, because that does happen. People show up without the right ID cards.
And make sure that your name on your ID matches. Your registration, because that could be a problem.
Go up to the front desk, give them your ID, they sign you in, they give you a key to the locker, you put all your stuff in the locker. The only thing you can leave outside of the locker, or the only reasons why you can access the locker from that point forward, is for medicine or for like snacks, right? And then you proceed to that's so like the lobby area. Yeah.
So you can leave your a water bottle, the juice, and some apple or chocolate fudge on top of the locker. So whenever you take your break, you can go and access it without even worry about getting into your locker.
And the exams are pretty long, so definitely bring some food. Unless you're on the keto diet and you never get hungry, I would bring food.
And bring something with sugar to keep you alert.
Yeah.
And bring something that makes you happy eating it.
Right.
Like, don't bring, like the corn toast chips things without flavor. Like, it's not a diet day. Like, like just have an extra that day to like boost your morale a little bit.
So that's like the lobby. Then you go into the back, and then there is a body scan, a metal detector.
Yep.
You go through. You put your locker key and your identification, your ID card. If
you have to take all of your jewelry off too before you do that.
Put your ID and keys in the little basket. Go through the thing. They ask you to turn inside out all of your pockets. You have to push up your sleeves, pull up your pants, and if you wear long socks, put down your long socks to show that you're not hiding anything in your socks. And then you sit and you wait. And so first, let me say this about the security. It's the same thing at the airport. It's like, I understand the gestures you're going through, but they're just gestures. If I want to have study materials, I would have study materials.
Then in my underwear, no one would know.
They don't check your underwear. They don't check inside your shoes. It's like it's totally pointless. But also having study materials for the AREs totally useless.
Oh, yeah,
again, because you're going to get there, it's going to be just like chaos. The downside is also when you're waiting in like kind of the waiting area right outside of the exam rooms. It takes them a long time to process people sometimes, and so I've been a number of the exams I'm there sitting, and there's like 6 other people ahead of me.
Yeah.
You end up sitting there on really uncomfortable, tacky, ugly office furniture that looks like it was stolen or taken from an office that closed. You sit there for like 35 minutes. And it's freezing because they blast the AC and they say to bring like a cardigan or jacket or whatever, in case you get cold. And so you sit there for like 35 minutes stressing out about this exam and trying to like, regurgitate and say all this stuff back to you so you don't forget it.
What time did you go?
The mornings usually. And so I found actually, I tried to determine like when the best time was to avoid the crowd. I don't think I ever figured it out. But it's also to say that if your exam is scheduled for 8 o'clock, it's better to get there, as you said, early to get ahead of the crowd. And also, if you get there on time for your 8 o'clock tests, you might not start taking it until, later than that. Yeah. And this all makes a difference because the exam's like 4 hours or whatever. You get hungry,
Yeah, no, I mean, before you go in the room, like have a bite of your snacks, go use the bathroom, like, stretch, like relax. Like you said, bring a sweater or a cardigan. I think it's either you have to wear it or not wear it, but oftentimes those rooms are pretty cold, and being cold when you take a test is not good.
If you're not wearing it, you have to put it in the back of the seat. That's the rule. And you can't wear something with a hood.
Same with your hair. Like if you have a hair tie, you have to like put it, like you have to use it.
Yeah.
Which is dumb. Like what am I going to do with a hair tie? Like
use it as an abacus or something. I don't know. Boing, boing, boing. This is simulating a beam.
It's like one day I went and I had like my stretchy earring things, and the lady's like, can I see that? So I take them off. They were like the transparent one. I take them off and I show it to her. It's like, I'm like, as you can see, it's clear. Like, I don't know what you want me to do with it. Yeah. Like, I mean, I can take them off, but obviously there's nothing in it, Or like they see that you have a piercing and it's like they start like staring at you. It's like, do you imagine how big the piece of paper would have to be to fit in there? Like, come on.
It's ridiculous. You go in, you sit down. Yeah. Yep.
Before you go in, when they sign you up, they do like fingerprints, picture, your name. They give you the, like draft paper, pens and stuff. Oftentimes they have like foam earplugs you can ask for, and they will give it to you. So definitely use these on top of the headphones you put in the room.
Yeah.
Because it could get pretty loud. I mean, I remember one of the testing center we went to in Brooklyn, they were doing like construction on the floor above. And I'm like, I paid $200 to take that test. I'm most likely going to fail, but like the testing situation is really not helping me, right?
Right. Yeah, earplugs, earmuffs, and one of the times I went in there, there's some dude taking I don't know what tests
typing.
Because those testing centers it's a company, that's their business, so they have tests for what?
Prometrics?
Yeah, Prometrics. There's a bunch of different ones.
Oh.
They, well, I guess it's all Prometrics for the AREs. It's different for the CSE. But they have a bunch of different exams for different people studying different things. And this guy was typing like a novel, and he was so loud. Like, I'm like, bro, do you mind? Do you see the room of the other 20 people? This is a testing center. No one's here just chilling. It's a testing center. Does anyone else do it? So, and so they set up your computer, you sit down, and, the other thing that said a lot is like, you should go on NCARB's website and do their practice, simulation to see. It's worthwhile to do it. But it's not that complicated. No. It's really not. I mean, you could go in there not having done the simulation and you'd be totally fine. It's like if you are an architect today and not even an architect, if you have an iPhone and you had to use an iPhone, you can figure out how to use this computer program.
No, it's not complicated to use. And they used to have that also for version 4.0 for you to practice the vignette section when they still had the vignette and you had to like draw with their stupid software, which was absurd. But I would still recommend to go check it out for version 5.0 for the case study part, because they have appendix materials that you will need during your case study questions, and knowing where things are probably going to be located. Like there is an excerpt of the IBC, like how do I key search, how do I bookmark a page, how do I zoom in and how do I zoom out, because it's kind of a very finicky, scroll zoom thing. So knowing like tools that make your research quicker is definitely handy.
Yeah. And there's a few things that, the calculator, you need to know where that is. I mean, there's an icon with the calculator.
That's true.
Marking questions or highlighting them for like, I think you can highlight questions. You can highlight text as you go, or you used to be able to, and you can mark questions so that later on, to go back to those ones. So when you get to the end of the exam, there's like different, buttons you can click, and one of them is to review all questions, or review, I think, unanswered questions, or review marked questions, which most of the exams, for me at least, I had time to go back and review almost all the questions once, and that was it. And then the time order. I was always right at the end of time. I guess for version 4.0, which just doesn't exist anymore, that drawing interface was so archaic that some really good advice, I think Danny told us, was like, just think of it as a video game. It's like a video game from like the mid 80s. It's like Super Mario Bros. Or something. Just think of it that way. Don't think of it as like a drawing program. Don't think of it as CAD. Don't think of it as design. Nothing. Just a video game, and your objective is to to win the game and just move stuff around until it's in the right place. Like that actually makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to do that. Duck Hunt. Let's see. So you can take as many breaks as you want, but then the clock keeps going. You have, typically an assigned break that lasts a certain,
I think it's like 10 minutes 15 or something.
Minutes. Just have to go outside, use the restroom, have a snack, come back in. And that's, I don't know.
The other thing which I didn't know that I discovered at my last exam was, they give you like, I think a piece or two of draft paper, like a couple pens. Well, like I like to take notes here and there and writing stuff and do little diagrams for myself and whatever else, right? And so I'm running out of paper. So you can ask for more paper, but which I didn't know, they take your paper away.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you put anything for certain questions that you're going to have to go back to, well, don't write too big because you might need to give up that sheet away and that might be a problem.
Oh, my God. Even the pencils they have are terrible. It's like the pencils are made with some kind of lead that somehow is the softness of like HB, but it has the density and the darkness of like a 9H. You write with it, you can't even see what you're writing with.
You're like engraving.
It's crazy. And the eraser is made out of gum. You try to erase, it's like, okay, well.
You try to erase? Oh, I never erase.
It's just, God.
And you cannot touch the screen when you answer the questions.
Yeah.
I did that once. I was trying to measure something with my thumb or something. And the guy came to me and was like, I'm sorry, miss, you can't touch the screen. I'm like, why? Or I usually sit on a chair with one of my leg under the other.
Yeah, can't do that.
And I think I had like both leg on the so I was just like sitting like this on the chair. The guy came to me, knocked my shoulder. He's like, "Miss, you have to like have your legs down." I'm like, "But I'm comfortable. That's how I sit."
The legs have to be down, and you have to keep your shoes on. You can't take off your shoes.
Well, I think I had like Birkenstocks that day. So
what I like to do during the exam, so taking the exam, so that's like all the, you know, the facility stuff. But taking the exam itself, there's a number of strategies. First of all, you have to keep in mind that to pass the exam, you just need to get a certain number right? And
for
correct.
version 5.0, yeah, before you had to have certain questions right in different categories.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, you know, when you get like your results, they had like, you know, A category 1, 2, 3. You did like good there, mediocre there, very good here. So you would know kind of which category you would need to work on if you retake it. And that would matter for your points because you need a certain number of points to pass. But in version 5.0, you just need a score. Like I don't know, it's like 80% to pass. It doesn't matter which category you get it right.
That's interesting. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but fine. So what that means is that...
That means you don't have necessarily to like do great at the case study. You could just pass doing the questions. Right.
So that's a good point. But it's very different than from taking a standard test for like a class where your objective is to get as many right as possible to get a higher grade. Yeah. This is a pass-fail situation. So, you know, it used to be... I had heard this somewhere. I might be misremembering the number. For version 4.0, it was like you need to get 67 questions out of 100 or something, right? So let's say the number is 67, right? It doesn't matter, and they need to be of different categories at that period of time. So what that means is that you can actually get a whole lot of questions wrong. So if you come across a question and you have no idea what it is, just skip it and go on to the next one, and then mark it for later. So what I would always do is use that strategy going through the entire exam in the first pass, right? So when I got to the end, I'd have a ton of questions marked because I would mark questions for things I didn't know at all and ones that I was on the fence about. Because then I go all the way through knowing, okay, I've gotten at least 50 points. I feel confident in that. Now I can go back and look at the remaining 50 questions, and I just need to get another 17 to pass this test. That's the better way to approach it rather than worrying about every single question.
Yeah, and I think the idea of not, you know, getting stopped on a question and wasting time on it is important because, like you said, it's just a matter of the percentage you get at the end to pass. You don't need to get all of them right. And things like, you know, questions where you have to do calculation or questions where you have to select multiples, you have more chances of getting that wrong. Right. Or like calculation takes more time to figure it out. So I would probably keep those for last.
It depends. You have to know how quickly you work and think. So if I got to a problem and I knew that it was going to take, this is going to take me at least 3 minutes to solve, but I'm 70% certain I can actually get this correct. And this is the first time I've seen the question. This is my first pass. I will spend 3 minutes to do it. Money in the bank, you know. But that's where you need to kind of gauge how far along you are and how much time you have.
And you can also find some answers in other questions sometimes. If you pay attention.
Right. The other thing for me was...
Once I think I had the same question like twice in an exam. I was like, all right, computer.
I've actually had questions where they had things misspelled or like words were omitted, you know? Like there's confusing language and then there's language which is not language, you know? It's like, come on.
And sometimes you have questions and you're like, what? Yeah. What is this about? What color underwear is Bob wearing on Tuesday for site meetings? Like, I don't know.
Trick question. It's sexual harassment. To be answering this question, you fail. So the other thing for me was not getting frustrated during the exam, which is really easy considering the way my brain works. And not getting frustrated because that's the wrong headspace to be in. And that was a big hurdle, you know. So and there's some exams where you start and the first 10 questions are relatively easy. You're like, oh, I'm good. Here we go. Right. I'm warming up and we're into it now. And there's others I've taken where like first question, what? Third question, second, third, fourth question, all difficult. And you just have to find a way to meditate yourself out of that funk because, you know, you still got another 3.5 hours in this thing. and you can't afford to be in that space. The last exam I took was the CSE, the California supplemental exam, and in the middle of the test, I had like a not a panic attack, but I had like a fit because the questions were just equally as bad as the AREs. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm a licensed architect now, in New York. How dare you ask me this question? Excuse me. But I had to I had to sit and close my eyes and all right, let's just move on past this question to the next one. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have, a lot of pressure on you to pass because you spend a lot of time studying.
That's why I think taking the break is important. I think for the last PPD test I took, I went through all of the questions and marked the ones I didn't know, saved the calculation ones for later, the multiple choice one I wasn't sure for later, and just focused on all of the questions I could answer right away. Yeah. And then I think I looked at the case study just to have an idea of okay, what questions are they asking? What is the topic about? And then I think I took my 15-minute break because I had to pee and I needed some water. And I also didn't want to start diving into case study right after responding 90 questions. And I think taking a break is super important. At previous exams, I did not. I went through the whole thing, the whole 3 hours, and I was like, that's it. I just want to get out of here. I don't want to spend any more time. I don't have to take my break. I'm not going to take it. Saved me 15 minutes. At the end of the day, I failed. So I think taking the break is important. Get a snack, use the bathroom, stretch, empty your brain. Think about how you could approach the questions that you've just seen. Think about them without having them right there. You kind of have some time to step back from the exam and look at it and breathe. And I think that really helped.
The other challenging thing with the exam is that the questions are non sequitur. So the first question might be about, each test is around a certain subject, but as you said, there's a lot of cross questions and cross content between the exams. So there's that. But even then, you have two questions back to back that are both about what's PPD stand for? Project Planning and Development. Right? Two questions that are both about that. They're not about contracts or whatever, but they're still so different. They're different projects. This is one scenario. Here's one project that's of a certain scale, certain size. Here's one issue. It has to do with details, right? Next project, completely different situation, different project, different set of questions, different answers, different everything. And it's not about detail. It's about planning. And it's really hard. It's really hard to jump between questions that way because we're a project-based profession. So it's this is the other thing that I kept thinking during the exam. It's well, if this were my project, I could answer this no problem because I've been thinking about it. I've had months of experience. I know the consultants. I know everyone. I can guess what the answer is, right? And I can do that during the exam, but it takes some... it's a real hardcore right turn to jump from one question to the next. Now I'm dealing with Susan instead of Bob, and now I have to think about this other thing. And then the third question, something different. And to me, that's also the really strange part of it is that you're scattered all over the place. But when you're designing a project, you're building a project, it's not like that. It's a long time to do a project, and it's week by week by week, and things slowly advance. You don't jump from beginning to end to the middle, then off to something else. Now you're talking about contracts, and then you're talking about planning. And that doesn't really happen.
It's what structural system would be best for this type of use or whatever. Well, I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I would have my consultant help me with that question.
The number of times.
I wouldn't be the one, proposing what should be what is not my domain.
That's the thing, too, is most practicing architects will tell you that it's not so much the knowledge of building systems in this case or whatever that's important. It's the ability to work with other people, to converse with other people, to have good consultants, have good relationships, and to a certain degree to be honest, to be I don't know this, let's figure it out and tell me what it is, and to orchestrate the bigger picture. The exam doesn't work that way. So you get hyper-specific questions, which the real answer in real life is, well, I think it's this, but 100% I'm not going to make that decision. That's not my job. We have a mechanical engineer. We were paying him to do this. I'm going to go talk to him for 10 minutes on a phone call, get an answer, right? And he's going to have a much better understanding of this. Yet on the exam, you're responsible for answering the question.
In the exam, they should give you the option where you can like make a call to a friend. Use a joker card.
What they should do is the question should be weighted differently. So like, instead of it being right or wrong, it's like if you answer, because there's always, for me, I've always found there's 5 options, A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, D, E, and it always comes down to 2. Like 3, obviously not the case, but A and C, I'm like, I don't know, but I'll call up my consultant. And I feel like what they should do is that if it's clear that the answer could be one of these 2, but the edge, A is given the edge because of some obscure fact, right? And you answer C, you should get 40% of the points still.
I was going to say, it could just give you half a point.
No, they should. I legit think that that's the case, especially for questions where in practice you're not going to be the one who makes the decision. You just won't. I mean, I suppose you could, but that would be, at that point, you're an engineer.
All right, and now, so before version 4.0, you had to wait like a week before you could consult your results online. But version 5.0...
Wait, so let me say something else too really quickly back to the exam. And maybe I already said it, I don't remember. But the reasons for the answer being the answer might have nothing to do with the question itself or the topic at hand, which I think maybe I've alluded to earlier on. So like the answer could be... So all of the other possible choices could be ruled out because of, let's say, contracts. But the question is framed and it sounds like it has nothing to do with contracts. So that's something to keep in mind. When you get to a question and you're totally confused, it could be because you need to expand your thinking past what the scenario seems to be setting up. The NCARB says explicitly in one of their documents online that there are no trick questions on the ARE. That's not true. Define trick question. I would say these are trick questions. You're setting up a scenario. You're giving all this information that's not relevant. You're giving information that's misdirection, and I would say that's a trick question.
Well, that, and they also say that all of the answers are right, but you have to pick the one that is the most right.
Yes, that's true. That's true most of the time.
Which to me is kind of bullshit. That's like, okay, it's the most right based on who, based on what? Like,
It's shades of gray at that point, If I get it close, then give me half a point. You know what I mean? Okay, you were saying.
I was saying that now you have the option at the end of the test. So it's been like 4 hours. You've been on that stupid computer. Your hands are sticky. Your eyes are burning. You're tired. You want to get out.
Why are your hands sticky?
Touching the keyboard and stuff.
Oh, okay.
How often do they clean those keyboards and mouse?
Every time. I actually had one exam where they had the computers shut down.
That's something that a lot of people are afraid of with version 5, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Which apparently, some features like striking through text and stuff like that can make the computer crash.
That's right.
It never happened to me. Like I took, the version 5 exams like multiple times. It never happened to me, but it did happen to you and to other people.
Well, the striking through the text, I always found to be super helpful.
I like it, but I learned that it might crash the computer, I just stopped using it.
That's a version 5 thing. I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. But what happened with me wasn't on. Well, I don't know why it crashed, but the entire testing facility had problems, and so we were all like floundering outside in the lobby for hours. And we're not allowed to leave the building. So, like, by the time and I failed this exam, and I complained, and they reimbursed me to take it again. But by the time the exam process ended, I had been at the facility for like something crazy, like 5.5 or 6 hours or something, and then commute time and stuff. I'm like, I wrote to the testing center. I was like, hey, look, this exam was supposed to take this number of hours. I strategically packed coffee and peanuts and half a sandwich or whatever, right? I'm like, this was not enough food. I'm like, legit, I was shaking by the end and I almost didn't care. I'm like, I need food. you're not gonna pass out taking this stupid architect's exam.
Yeah, because they have water there, but they don't have any food vending machine you could buy.
And when one girl, I remember, we were in the same testing facility. She was an architect, and we're all waiting in the lobby, and she kind of disappeared. I didn't notice, and she came back in, and she was eating a giant sandwich. I'm like, hey, where'd you get that from? She's like, went and got a sandwich. I'm like, you're not supposed to leave the testing facility.
That happened to a friend of mine. She was like, she got red flagged by the testing center because she took her break and she really wanted coffee. So she went downstairs to the Starbucks, came back up, and people at the testing center were freaking out that she left because they could see her with the security camera.
Mm-hmm.
So she got in some trouble for that. But no, I mean, it is a thing, the computer crashing. And the truth is, you should only be stressed out and worried about the things you can control. There is no point to stress out about your computer might be crashing because you cannot control it.
Yeah.
Right? So just focus on the things you can control.
Well, that's why living in New York is super helpful, because you just get used to being obedient and letting things be out of your, stress zone. Like the subway, for example. No control. Guess we'll just sit here.
Well, that's also why I always showed up 45 minutes before my appointment, because I'm if the subway gets messed up, how am I going to get there?
But with 5.0...
So
I don't know if this is still the case, but I remember the transition from 4 to 5. One of the big discussions was that 5.0 was slow. The test itself was slow. It would take too much time to transition from one question to the next. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let's see. And that could be a problem for someone like me, because I always used up every second of the exam for 4.0 when the test was relatively quick. And maybe they fix it, but it was true. You would click and submit your answer for, question 1, and then question 2 is there. And you add that up times 100, it's okay, well, that's costing me minutes, you know what I mean? And that's not including the fact that you're going to run through the exam multiple times to review questions. And I think it was because that in 4.0, what they did was they had the exam actually stored in the local server, at the testing facility. 5.0, they didn't. The exam was stored in one place, so all the testing centers were having to, remotely access that content and then feed it back. I'm like, what?
How does that even work?
Well, give us an extra 10 minutes on the test then if you're going to, have these kinds of delays.
Yeah, that's silly.
Anyway.
So at the end of 5.0, you have the option to get basically an estimate of most likely pass or most likely failed the test.
Yeah.
And that was a big feature, when 5.0 came out. You can find out right away. You don't have to wait another week. And I think the first time I was fine, I don't want to wait. Just let me know if I need to reschedule it and keep studying, or if I can move on with my life. Well, when you finish a test after 3-4 hours and you see on the screen most likely failed, man, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. You just want to go to the local dive bar and drink yourself to death and forget about today. You know what I mean? It's I just wasted a whole day basically. So I don't know. I did look my results many times, but the past few times I was just you know what? I'm not going to look. I will look in a couple of days. I'm going to give myself a break. I'm not going to think about exams. I'm not going to think about retaking, failing, passing. I'm just going to put it on hold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's understandable, I suppose. I would have to find out immediately. I don't want to wait. I guess that's it. I guess now the exam is done and you find out if you failed or you passed. If you did fail, just keep going. It's not even... Yeah, I read somewhere someone said in terms of the mentality to have, that it's not about passing. Someone wrote that. I'm like, well, that's bullshit. Of course it's about passing.
Of course it's about passing.
It's a fucking stupid thing to say. It's not about passing. It is about passing. It's a test. We're only taking the test to pass to be a licensed architect. I will say, though, it's not about passing the first time.
It's not about how many trials you need to pass.
Yeah. No, it's not about that. You just do what you need to do. And if you're in it right now and you failed a few times, we've both been there. It's not fun, but just keep taking it.
If I can do it, you can all do it.
Take some comfort in knowing that it's also probably not you. It might be you, but it's also very much the exam itself is just nuts. It's like a bag of trail mix.
And the thing you have to know too is that I think you have 5 years to complete all of your exams as soon as you start signing up for them. So some people, for example, they take a couple exams and then like they have a kid, they put on hold for a year or two, and then like the rolling clock is close to ending. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you don't miss your window of time for that. Otherwise, you will have to retake them all.
Yeah. I would probably try. For me, I would prefer to do them all in one stretch to get it done and out of the way as soon as possible. But even then, let's say you do 6 weeks per exam, which is a pretty tight schedule, generally speaking, with all its craziness of life. 6 weeks time. How many exams are there now? 6?
6.
So that's 12 weeks. So that's 3 months. Is that right? No, 4 months. What? 6? 6 times 6, 36. Wait, what is it? What did I say? 6 exams? 6 weeks, 36 weeks. 36 divided by 4, 9 months. So that's going to be like... So
that's like no break. That's like back-to-back exams.
Back-to-back.
And assuming you're not failing any other way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why the exams take, years sometimes.
But I think it's good if you find out you failed a test to reschedule it as soon as you can, so you don't lose that material that you've been studying for.
Yes.
Otherwise, you have to go back to materials you haven't looked at in months. And it takes time to like warm back up, remember the things you're comfortable and uncomfortable with, and also estimate how much time or like the different things you could look at in that time frame. So
yeah. Anything else?
And for the PPD, PDD, they have some similar content, and some people are like, oh, you should take them, like back to back or the same day. Oh, okay, I would not recommend taking 2 exams the same day. That's a little like bananas, right? It's intense on the brain, on the eyeballs, on the stomach. I mean, on the sleep, but maybe like, you have a week or 2 in between. I think is not a bad thing.
Yeah. A week or two.
Yeah. So you have enough time to kind of like, focus on the next one, reflect on the one that you've just studied for,
that's if you're studying for the first one is actually like 90% both, 10% specific to the
because PPD and PDD have similar content in a way, they're just looked at differently. I would say
that's kind of interesting because my memory of it, you're probably more correct than I am, was that they were very different. And the one that was there's one that's about like drawings, basically construction, and there's one that's about planning and more broad scope things. For me, the one that had to do with construction drawings is what it felt like. Details and that kind of stuff was easy because it's like actually. I say it was easy, and because like how do you mess up a drawing? But they managed to mess up a drawing. A lot of the drawings I can't even tell what they are. There's no hierarchy. They're drawn in some kind of weird axonometric things. So there's no front and there's no forward and back to it. It's like, But the one that was like I think it was PPD, the planning, the bigger picture one. That was much more difficult because the concepts were vague. And that was the one where a lot of the information was just not as black and white.
And I would say I'll probably start with, again, I mean, that's what I did with PPD first and then PDD. Because I feel like PPD is more like broad scope when PDD is like a little more close up to those topics. They both have the same topics of knowledge. And I think that's why I like Amber Book, for example, because they're materials is organized by topics and not by PPD or PDD. Like you get to look at the whole plumbing system in many different like ways to look at it, not just like, oh, we're going to look at it from afar and then in the other material we're going to look at it from up close. No, it's like all in one, so you look at it from all of the angles. When like Kaplan and Ballast, they like split the content, but then you reread some of the exact same content from another chapter in the one you're currently in, and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna skip that because I already read it, but they might add like a couple of things here and there. So it's just
for sure.
No good. It's no good.
And I will say, like talking about the concepts and the tests, the mock test questions and things like this with the person out loud is also helpful.
And that's where, for example, where like the bootcamp was great because they had a lot of like meetings with people via video, or people would like put together presentation to like quiz each other. So like, even if you have friends who are taking the test, well, maybe meet on Saturday and like just quiz each other with each other's flashcards. because, like you said, you have to explain things out loud.
It's
not like it's in your head and it's clear. No, it might not be that clear.
There's definitely the difference between it being internal and external, but also it's that when you, it's one mental exercise to take information that's here, to copy it over there on a flashcard and memorize it into here. That's one thing. And it's a very different thing to look at that material, frame a question around it, and be able to explain why it's the way it is to a person out loud or in writing or something. And it's the same thing as like learning versus teaching, right? It's just because you know something doesn't mean you can teach it. And as soon as you have to explain something in a way, teach it or present it, then you realize very quickly for yourself, I actually don't know this as well, or I know this actually pretty well. And that's where the gaps are much more visible. Right. All right. So this was pretty long. We're going to wrap it up here. I feel like there's a lot of stuff we didn't cover, but if there's any questions you all have about any of this stuff that we didn't answer or you want us to speak further on, then just hit the hotline 213-222-6950. Call it. It goes straight to voicemail. Text it as well, and then we will address our questions on the show. But we're almost at 2 hours, so we want to wrap this one up. We good?
We are.
All right, everybody. Stay positive with what you're doing. This is the Midnight Charrette. We're on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We have a website, so if you are looking for other helpful information about the profession of architecture and design, go to our website. We have a bunch of different types of episodes. We have interviews. We have ones with the two of us that are more fun. And then we have tips and tactics, which is what this one is like. We have episodes about producing a portfolio. And I will say this, so portfolio, resume, how to do an interview, how to, I don't know, whatever. I'd like to think that the content that we're putting out for the most part in these episodes is stuff that you won't see anywhere else. That's a bold statement coming from the person who produces it, but I think it's true, and I think it's because, like, I don't know. I've come across a lot of these study guides or helpful things like how to make a portfolio, and a lot of them are bullshit. It's like the same generic information, and it's exhausting to see, and I don't like the information that they're putting out, and I also think it's not coming from someone who I trust.
I've seen one recently where it's like, oh, here is template to make your resume. And it's literally like an Illustrator file with like, you just have to fill out your information. And I'm like, excuse me, you're a designer, you can put together like a resume of your own shit. Like, so no, like, you know, we give tips and tactics and strategies that have worked for us, but we're going to do the work for you, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, check out the website. What else? We're on all the social media, so you can reach out to us that way. We post clips of interviews, quotes, behind the scenes. We try to have some fun too. And we appreciate that you're listening. And again, any questions, just hit the hotline 213-222-6950. Right?
Yep.
Good. All right, everybody. This is the Midnight Charrette, and we will talk to you again next week. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.